Hey there, Red here, ready to dive into the roller coaster of emotions, drama, and love, as we uncover the most captivating relationship Reddit stories. So buckle up, listeners, and let's embark on this thrilling journey together. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more. Am I the antagonist for telling my sister the real reason why my fiancé was absent from her wedding? I am a 30-year-old man. My fiancée Shelly is a 26-year-old woman. Ever since I met Shelly, she has been open about one of her interests, which is Korean music. It's not exactly my preference, but I am always happy to hear her talk about it. I was not aware early in our relationship, though, that by Korean music she particularly meant one specific male pop star. His name is Kai. Since we began living together last year, I've also come to learn that it's less of an interest and more of an obsession. She spends an excessive amount of time looking at his pictures, following his fan communities, and listening to his music. If I'm being perfectly honest, it's a pretty significant turn-off for me personally, but people will like what they like, I suppose. Last summer, my sister told us that she was getting married and we were thrilled for her. We immediately RSVP'd for her wedding, which was on Friday, January 12th. However, in December, Shelly came up to me and told me that she couldn't attend my sister's wedding. When I asked why, she responded that she was going to be in South Korea around that time. I figured that Kai was having some sort of a performance or fan meet and greet, but it was even worse. Shelly wanted to attend a fan-held birthday party event. Apparently, his birthday is January 14th, which is today's date in South Korea. I asked if she was out of her mind, seeing as she doesn't speak Korean, other than some of the lyrics of his she memorized. She doesn't have that much money and lives primarily off of what I make, and she was going to prioritize some random pop star's birthday party over her fiancé's sister's wedding. Shelly told me she was going, and that was that. Before she left for the trip a few days ago, on my birthday actually, she begged me to tell my sister that she couldn't go because she was sick. I really didn't want to talk about it and just told her okay. Well, yesterday was my sister's wedding. It was a lovely ceremony. My sister and her husband were confused as to why Shelly wasn't there, and I immediately admitted that she was in South Korea for an event. My sister was a little upset, but I told her not to let it ruin the day for her. After the wedding, my sister apparently emailed Shelly, telling her that she wished she would have been upfront because she could have saved some money on her food for the event. And then Shelly emailed me furious about my telling the truth. Was I wrong to tell her the truth, or were my actions justified here? No, you weren't wrong to tell your sister the truth. Shelly should have been honest and upfront about her plans from the beginning, especially considering it was your sister's wedding. It's understandable that she's upset, but ultimately, her priorities were not in the right place, and it's important to be truthful in situations like these. I broke up with my fiancée after she asked for an open marriage. How do I get her and our families to leave me alone? I, a 27-year-old male, have been in a relationship with my fiancée, a 27-year-old female, for 5 years. We share many similarities and I truly loved her. I proposed to her 10 months ago, which she accepted. Our families were thrilled and have been immensely helpful with the wedding planning and finances. Despite not being a great planner myself, I got involved in the preparations. However, a recent conversation led me to end the relationship, causing a commotion among our families and mutual friends. During dinner, I asked her if her uncle had confirmed his availability to officiate our wedding. Strangely, she looked at me and asked what I thought about open marriage. I was taken aback. Call me old-fashioned, but I believe that marriage signifies a commitment to one person for life, with no involvement of others. I explicitly expressed this to her, but she argued that we were still young and she loved me. She wanted to marry me and eventually have children, but she lacked prior experience. I questioned what was wrong with that, but she interrupted me by suggesting an open marriage. I immediately refused, reiterating my feelings on the matter. I got up to leave and she urged me to give it a chance, claiming my perspective might change. At that moment, everything I felt for her vanished entirely. I informed her that if that's what she wanted, she was free to pursue it with someone else, as our relationship was over. Although she tried to backtrack, saying it was merely a suggestion, I didn't want to hear excuses. I sought refuge in our spare room, locking the door. She attempted to open it, crying and apologizing, but I remained silent, only shedding tears. Eventually, she stopped knocking, and I fell asleep. The next morning, I went to work and confided in a friend about the situation, asking if I could stay with him. He agreed, so I swiftly moved out that day while she was at work. When she returned home and discovered my belongings missing, she bombarded my phone with frantic calls. I answered and she cried, asking what I was doing. I assured her that I was serious about ending the relationship the previous night. As her responses shifted from pleading to anger, I chose not to react and simply hung up, subsequently blocking her number. It has been a week, and she hasn't relented in her attempts to contact me and change my mind. She even involved our families, who argue that she never cheated and exploring different relationship options is normal. I told them to leave me alone, but they persist in approaching me. I feel lost and unsure about what to do. Dude, you did the right thing by breaking up with her. She dropped the bombshell of wanting an open marriage out of nowhere and didn't even bother to listen to how you felt about it. That's a huge red flag. Don't let her or your family's guilt trip you into changing your mind. Stand your ground and focus on moving on from this mess. Am I the antagonist for letting my brother-in-law think he might have to pick up the bill at a restaurant? I frequently travel for work and therefore have limited opportunities to spend time with my family. However, I make an effort to visit them a few times each year. During these visits, I enjoy taking everyone out to a nice restaurant for supper. I don't mean to dine at an extravagant 3-star Michelin restaurant, but it still tends to be relatively expensive. The group usually consists of myself, my parents, my sister, her husband, their 2 kids, my brother, his girlfriend, and their 2 kids, totaling 11 people. The bill usually ranges from $600 to $1,000. It is indeed a significant amount of money, but I take pleasure in treating my family. I look forward to seeing my nieces and nephews engage with each other instead of having their faces buried in screens. They genuinely enjoy dining at fancy restaurants. Recently, I discovered that my brother-in-law is bothered by this tradition. However, that was news to me. He seems to believe that I am doing it to show off, which is not the case. In fact, I had an uncle who played a role in kickstarting my career, and he used to do the exact same thing when I was growing up. He even went to greater lengths, such as taking our family of 26 people to Disney World about 30 years ago. I imagine it must have been quite expensive. He claimed it was our Christmas and birthday gift for the year, but he still sent me money twice that year, totaling $50. Since it had been a good year for me, I treated everyone to a relatively expensive steakhouse this holiday season. When the bill arrived, my brother-in-law insisted on paying this time. Despite my attempts to decline and explain that I invited everyone and intended to cover the expenses, he persisted. To avoid causing a scene, I relented. However, his expression changed when he looked at the bill. I had allowed my nieces and nephews to bring their partners along, so there were 14 of us in total. The bill amounted to slightly over $2,000, excluding the tip. Ultimately, he paid the bill. The following day, I had a coffee with my sister, and although she didn't bring it up, I decided to address the situation. I expressed that I wasn't angry, but rather disappointed by his actions. She confessed that she was upset because they couldn't afford to spend an extra $2,500 so casually. This revelation surprised me, prompting me to ask her if she considered it wasteful for me to treat everyone. Realizing her mistake, she apologized and admitted she was primarily frustrated with him for compromising their budget. To alleviate their financial burden, I gave her $2,500. Her reaction seemed on the verge of tears. I reassured her that I take everyone out because I miss witnessing their growth and the family activities I can't be a part of due to frequent traveling. During my brief visits, I simply want to create positive memories. Later that day, my brother-in-law called me an asshole for allowing him to pay while discussing it with my sister behind his back. I assured him that I wouldn't disclose the money I gave to my sister and emphasized that I had no intention of hurting him. I suggested keeping it between us. Now, I wonder if I should have insisted on paying instead of letting him believe he had depleted his family's grocery budget for the next couple of months on a single meal. Wow, that's a tough situation. It sounds like your intentions were good and you just wanted to have a nice family dinner. Your brother-in-law definitely overreacted, but I understand why he might be upset about the unexpected bill. Maybe next time, just make it clear from the start that it's your treat to avoid any misunderstandings. Am I the antagonist for telling my wife that she's been sitting on her butt this whole time while her family member is in the ICU? I, a 30-year-old male, told my 32-year-old wife that she had been sitting around doing nothing while her grandpa was in the ICU at the hospital, waiting for news from the doctors. Meanwhile, I had been trying to clean and tidy up the house in case we had overnight visitors from her side of the family. Her grandpa was initially admitted to a hospital, but was later transferred to a better-equipped hospital. My wife had been there by their side every day for the past week, keeping them company. Meanwhile, I was working my job and taking care of the kids when I came home, cooking, cleaning, and providing her with food and other necessities. It's important to note that the hospital where her grandpa is placed is over an hour away due to heavy traffic and reckless driving. Just before this incident, her mother was in the ER due to severe sciatica and stayed there from 3 p.m. until 7 a.m. the next morning. I personally took her to the ER and waited almost the entire night before my wife took over, as I had work in a few hours. I left work early multiple times last week to fulfill my wife's needs and wants, as well as to be there for the kids and make sure they didn't question why their great-grandpa was in the hospital. So last night I fed the kids, tidied up the house, and waited for my wife and her mom to return from the hospital to have dinner. Earlier in the day, amidst my cleaning, I delivered some items she needed. I informed her that I needed to give the younger 2 kids a shower, but it didn't happen. After finishing the cleaning and starting and finishing the cooking, I was in the middle of giving the 2 kids a shower when she told me that I had already done so. I clarified that I hadn't because I had been occupied with cleaning and cooking. She remarked that I had arrived home hours ago, and it was already 9 p.m. I explained that I had returned at 3 p.m., finished the cleaning, immediately began prepping for cooking, and didn't eat until 7:30 p.m. This led to an argument about this issue, and I mentioned how I had been doing everything possible to ensure the kids were comfortable. The house was clean, and there was food on the table while she worked, and then went to the hospital to wait for updates from the doctors. I realized that I messed up and started apologizing for my words. I'm starting to worry that she might leave me because of this incident. I truly don't want her to leave. Was I wrong here? Man, I gotta say, I understand your frustration and all, but you really shouldn't have said that to her. It sounds like you both have been going through a lot with hospital visits and stuff, so tensions must be high. Apologize to your wife, dude, and work on communicating better so you both can support each other through this tough time. Am I the antagonist for telling my half-sister I don't owe her as living in the same house? My half-sister and I have the same mother. Unfortunately, our mother passed away when I was only 6 years old, and my half-sister was just 18 months old. Tragically, I also lost my father when I was only 2 months old. When I was 4 years old, my mom married my half-sister's biological father, but he never adopted me. Eventually, my mother also passed away. I vaguely remember speaking to a social worker and possibly a judge during that time, but I'm not entirely sure. My dad's brother and sister-in-law were granted guardianship over me, and I distinctly remember wanting to live with my uncle at that time. I voiced this preference to those who asked. I do have one specific memory of my half-sister's dad, and it was not a pleasant one. However, I don't recall much about living with him specifically, although I do remember my mom quite well. She had her fair share of problems, but I cannot say for certain if they existed before my dad's death or if they arose afterwards. Since custody was decided, my half-sister and I have been seeing each other once a month. This arrangement has remained consistent for years. My half-sister always desired more frequent visits, but I was content with seeing her once a month. She has repeatedly suggested that I should move in with her and her dad, but I have consistently declined. She often questions why I refer to my own father as dad instead of calling her dad the same. I have always explained that we have different fathers, and that her dad has 2 daughters, of which I am the other one. Occasionally, I would show her pictures of my dad, which would sometimes frustrate her because he passed away when I was very young, whereas I have memories of her dad. During the past year, my half-sister has become increasingly fixated on the idea of me moving in with her family. However, I am now 16 years old and content with my current living situation. I have always made it clear to her that I am happy at home with my own family, but she insists that she and her dad are my family as well. A few months ago, I lost my temper when she brought up the topic again. I simply grew tired of hearing it. Her reaction was distressing, and she requested to end our visit early. Then last month, during our visit just a week before Christmas, she approached me with the idea that I owe it to her to move in with them because I am her big sister and I made the choice not to stay with her and her dad. She emphasized how much it would mean to her and appealed to my sense of being a good big sister. However, I firmly expressed that I do not owe her that. Living together in the same house is not what I want, nor am I willing to make it happen. This greatly angered her, and she yelled at me. Subsequently, her dad called my uncle and expressed his anger over the phone, claiming I should have handled the situation with more tact. So, am I the asshole? It's completely understandable that you don't want to move in with your half-sister and her dad, especially since you're happy where you are. You have the right to make your own decisions about where you live and what's best for you. It's not fair for your half-sister and her dad to guilt-trip you into doing something you're not comfortable with. Am I the antagonist for telling my cousin to control his kids or leave? Yesterday, my 30-year-old cousin Jay, along with his wife Mal and their 2 kids Kai, 8-year-old girl, and Lee, 6-year-old boy, came over to visit my family. We had lunch together. Although I don't know the kids very well, I didn't think much of it. Before leaving for the gym, I made sure to close my bedroom door. I work from home and have my workstation set up there, which includes a laptop and 2 screens. Additionally, I keep my PS5 and cherished book collection in the room. However, I left the Nintendo Switch in the TV room and connected it to the dock for the kids to play before I left. When I returned home, I noticed that my bedroom door was open. Upon entering, I discovered that Kai and Lee had turned on my laptop, left the PlayStation running, and thrown all my books from the shelf onto the floor. Both my Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings book collections were torn. I immediately went outside and informed my mom about what had happened. She was shocked and explained that she had supervised the kids in the TV room, assuming my belongings would be safe. I asked Mal, and she claimed that the kids wanted to play in my room, thinking I wouldn't mind. This is the point where I may have acted poorly. I told my cousin that my laptop is not a toy. It's essential for my work. I also mentioned that my mom had bought me those expensive book collections, which were now ruined. He brushed it off, saying that they were just kids. Frustrated, I told him that if he couldn't control his kids and let them behave like wild animals, he should leave. Eventually, he left, and my dad criticized me, stating that I had crossed the line and should have shown more respect. On the other hand, my mom sided with me and apologized, acknowledging that she had instructed them not to enter my or my brother's room. My cousin texted me later, calling me rude and expressing disbelief that I disrespected him. He accused me of being childish for getting upset over books in a game, claiming that I couldn't understand because I didn't want kids. In response, I told him that after meeting his kids, I had become solid birth control for myself. So am I the asshole? Your cousin brought his kids over without properly supervising them, despite your mom explicitly telling them not to go into your room. It's completely understandable that you would be upset about your valuable belongings being damaged. Your cousin's dismissive response shows a lack of respect for your personal space and possessions, and it's not unreasonable for you to express your frustration. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.